Welcome to the Rock and Roll Gutter Podcast. Music from the wrong side of the tracks. This is a show that drags you through the gritty alleys of sleaze rock, gutter glam, and all forms of dirty rock and roll. And now, here are your hosts, Andy and Gary.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rock and Roll Gutter Podcast. I'm your host, Andy. With me, as always, is my charming co-host, Gary.
Who?
Gary, what band are we going to talk about today? In all the world of sleaze rock, what little band are we going to pull out of the bottom and talk about today?
We're going to talk about a band that a lot of people fondly remember, but have slipped entirely from the public view. They didn't hang around all that long. And the story is rather dramatic, but we're going to go down the alley and we're going to pick on a band known as the Joneses, Andy.
Who?
The Joneses. Now, if you want to talk about the roots of Hollywood sleaze rock, that goes back quite a ways, but even before the Sunset Strip became more or less a polished industry machine,
right?
Back in the day, you have to talk about the Joneses.
You have to.
They were among the gutter rock bands that were crawling around Los Angeles in the early 80s, and boy, wasn't there a shitload of gutter rock bands crawling around Los Angeles in the early 80s.
Thank God, because otherwise, what would we talk about?
Yeah, exactly. You know, this podcast would be blown to hell. The Joneses were widely regarded as the first, maybe one of the toughest, and certainly the most authentic sleaze rock bands around. In fact, many fans from back in the day and historians of that time period consider them kind of like the original sleaze rock band, Andy.
The original, the first, the beginning of the scene.
Yeah, so that's some high praise. Instead of yap, yap, yap like we always do on this podcast, we're going to give you a taste of this band right off the top. This is from their first entry into the scene. This is an EP. The EP was titled Criminals. This is the song Fix Me from the Joneses. Here we go.
Joneses, they were not manufactured rebellion. Nobody in the Joneses was pretending to be dangerous. They were living the kind of lives that record companies usually prefer not to hear about. Led by the charismatic Jeff Drake, the band took the swagger of, let's say, the New York Dolls, mixed it in with the grease and the rockabilly of Chuck Berry and even Eddie Cochran. Then they dragged the whole thing through the back alleys of Hollywood Boulevard.
There's a mix.
The result was something completely their own. Too glam for the hardcore crowd, of course. Too punk for the rock crowd, of course. We've heard this before. The Joneses occupied a tiny little filthy corner in the music world that nobody else seemed capable of reaching.
And at the center of this chaos was is Jeff Drake. He's a singer, guitarist, survivor, and the one constant member in a band that rotated players like a casino roulette wheel. Around him, you had this revolving cast of punk rock degenerates and future legends. Degenerates?
People.
That'd be a great name for a band, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think Degeneration already got that on, Anyways, along with that, Steve Olson, who used to be a pro skateboarder.
Yeah, I believe he won Best Skateboarder in 1986, something like that.
I don't know, but he helped start this band. And then you're going to add Ron Emery and Mitch Dean from TSOL, True Sons of Liberty.
Another legendary band.
Johnny Sage from Christian Death, who I know nothing about.
A goth band that started pretty heavy, kind of a very punk goth band.
Yeah, as opposed to the non-Christian Death.
Right.
Heathens. Scott Franklin, that guy, he'd later wind up in the Cramps, I believe.
Another rockabilly-based band.
And finally, Paul Mars Black, before he crossed paths, of course, with LA Guns. If you want to define their music, it's packed with tales of decadence, pills, and juvenile delinquency, a favorite of ours.
Definitely. This is checking all of our boxes.
Decadence, pills, and juvenile delinquency?
Yeah.
Well, it grew from raw punk and roll into kind of a harder, dirtier, glam rock swagger straight out of the 1970s, and that made them a blueprint for the coming Sunset Strip explosion while still hanging on to a reckless punk attitude, Andy, that labels like, Elektra Records and Geffen Records reportedly considered them that they were too dangerous to touch.
Ooh, look out, people. Too dangerous.
So to combat that, the Joneses' discography includes early self-released singles. Like in 1982, they released Jonestown. That was a 7-inch. And I think, Andy, in 1983, the Criminals EP was released on American Standard Records, and we already played you a song from that Criminals EP. So there you go.
Correct. The band even released the tracks Graveyard Rock and Pillbox on the 1982 BYO Records compilation titled, something very catchy here, Someone Got Their Head Kicked In.
Ooh.
Yeah. The problem was they didn't sound like the other bands on that record, Gary. While, everybody else was screaming about, urban decay and then mosh pits and all that kind of stuff. The Joneses, like we mentioned earlier, they're singing songs about pills, criminals, bad decisions, and girls, which is probably pretty much their life history. They had the swagger, they had melody, they even had groove. But here's the hilarious part. The hardcore punks absolutely hated them. So how'd they end up on a hardcore punk compilation? Who knows? But according to history, the Joneses reportedly received more hate mail from that album than all the other bands on the record combined received positive fan mail. Clearly, they were not loved.
I don't care what they write about me, good or bad, as long as they write about me, right?
Exactly.
Any press is better than no press.
Yeah, so I guess this falls into that whole definitely too glam for the hardcore punks. And
how these Hollywood rockers get on our bona fide punk?
Yeah, that's very questionable. Maybe they knew somebody.
Well, hating the band, that's punk unto itself, isn't it?
Exactly.
All right.
Let's listen to the song Pillbox. Now, this is the very first song that was written by a 16-year-old Jeff Drake. So back before the Joneses were even founded, this was the first song written. Let's check it out.
Pain.
underneath all the chaos, there was something genuinely cool about them. Not industry cool, like real cool, the kind of cool that you can't fake. They had this mix of youthful recklessness and old school rock and roll swagger. That's about 3 swaggers for this episode, Andy.
Yeah, how many are we going to have?
I don't know. That swagger made them feel timeless, even though they were completely falling apart in real time. And, and live shows, forget it. The Joneses were absolute street fight rock and roll. Their shows at places like Club Lingerie and the Music Machine were sweaty, loud, teetering on the edge of collapse. They looked like juvenile delinquents who had just robbed a liquor store and immediately started a band in the parking lot, Andy.
Oh, one of those bands.
I don't know. They were good enough that in 1984, readers of the LA Weekly voted them the best live band in Los Angeles. Now, think about that for a second, Andy.
Yes.
Think about that just for a second. Best live band in all of Los Angeles. This is peak Sunset Strip insanity. Motley Crue were exploding.
Right.
Rat is right there climbing up the charts. And every other band on the Strip was trying to land a record deal. Yet the Joneses, Andy.
The Joneses.
This filthy glam punk wrecking crew were the band that people just couldn't stop talking about.
Think about the competition back then. Like you mentioned, Motley and Rat. Think of how many other bands that were on that scene at the same time. And this band, this trashy little band, is voted above each and every one of those.
You got your warrants climbing the charts. What are some of the other players around that time frame that were chewing up the charts at that time? Anyways, I don't know. Let's give you guys another song by this band. This song is probably loosely based on a tablet called Quaalude. This song is titled Miss 714. This is a catchy little number. Turn this fucker up.
The band's momentum continued with the recording of their debut full-length album. No more EPs, no more singles. We're going to do a full album. They titled this album, Keeping Up with the Joneses.
Do you know what that term means, keeping up with the Joneses?
I know what it means. I'm not quite sure where it comes from.
It's a widely regarded term, though. I mean, you've heard it before, right?
Yeah, it's a movie title. It's been around for ages.
And this is the title of their album, right? Keeping Up with the Joneses?
Correct.
So I did a little research, as I'm wont to do, because we educate and entertain. You know the phrase, keeping up with the Joneses, Andy?
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously it means trying to match the social status or the wealth or the lifestyle of your neighbors or peers, right?
Correct.
But it originated from a popular American newspaper comic strip of the same name. This is created by this guy named Arthur Normand. And this comic strip ran from 1913, Andy, to 1940.
Pretty successful, but I can't say I've ever heard of it before.
Well, this guy, Normand, he created the comic strip to satirize his own life as a newlywed living beyond his means in Cedarhurst, New York.
Got to keep the wife happy.
Well, he's trying to match the lavish lifestyle of his wealthy neighbors, but, so this is basically on his own life. And he originally considered using the name Smiths, but he chose the Joneses because it was and still is, a highly common surname.
Yes.
And that allows the family to act as a general stand-in for any typical affluent peer group,
Right.
But because of the comic strip's massive success over its nearly 3-decade run, Andy, the Joneses entered the cultural lexicon as a universal synonym for the people that you try to keep up with. So here's our band, Keeping Up with the Joneses.
Nice.
Carry on.
Carry on. This album, it ran into some issues getting released. I guess they were signed to some label that signed some bad distribution deals, got sued, so everything got delayed. So for once, the legal issues weren't with the band, it was actually with the label. But it received a lot of airplay on college radio at the time, which was what, we used to listen to before alternative was the name that they called it. But, with all those delays, they ended up going through a different label to get that record out there. And it was ultimately released in 1987. After all the delays, 1987 on Dr. Dream Records. Their songs were definitely loose, very raw, and as you've heard, they could be kind of messy.
They're not too far off from what the Trash Brats were doing in Detroit right about the same time period.
Right.
That whole kind of off the edge, kind of...
flying by the seat of your pants, very raw, very unfiltered, definitely not polished in any way. Songs like Criminals in My Car, Pillbox, Graveyard Rock... These were definitely not the polished arena rock anthems that everybody's used to. These were like gutter songs dedicated to the total underbelly of Hollywood, which, is where the whole sleaze thing comes from. If you listen very closely to the Joneses, you're going to hear pieces and ideas of what would later on dominate on the Sunset Strip. The swagger.
That's got to be 4 swaggers.
4 for sure.
There you go.
Then the sleaze.
You just can't have a band limp onto the scene,
No,
can you,
you
Andy?
can't.
And this band came limping onto the scene with one bad leg dragging behind it.
They sauntered onto the scene with a mix of punk attitude and obviously that Stones-inspired rock and roll. And, this is years before Guns N' Roses becomes like, the biggest band in the world. The Joneses were already building that bridge between punk and hard rock. That's why a lot of music historians have called them that missing link, so to speak, between the first wave of LA punk and then what would have come later on with that sleaze rock explosion. So speaking of sleaze rock, let's listen to something that is kind of Stonesy feeling from the Joneses. This is the song from that debut album, Keeping Up with the Joneses. This is the song Black Cat Bone. Here we go.
Well, it was 2, 3
You realize every band that we cover has to have a Stonesy type of song, that Exile on Main Street kind of...
every single one.
Every band that we have has to have... I guess it's part of the rule book,
Yeah, I think it shows that you know where the roots of everything came from if you have that Stonesy sound.
Well, so-called the missing link between the first wave of, L.A. punk and the sleaze rock that came afterwards with, all the band, the Faster Pussycats and the, sleazy band, the L.A. Guns and whatever, yeah. Well, the irony of that is the bands that came after them, they became stars, right?
Yeah, they're the ones that ended up on MTV.
The Joneses became legends unto themselves,
right,
and to the historians, but I don't think they, as we say in the trades, moved the units, lads.
They did not.
But that influence that they had, that wasn't lost on the musicians that were coming up behind them quickly,
No, it was not.
Future members of Guns N' Roses were regulars at Jones's shows. They were soaking up the atmosphere long before they conquered the world. Drake even recalled one infamous night at the club Raji's when he reportedly kicked members of Guns N' Roses off the stage during a performance. A very Jones's way to interact with a future stadium act, to be sure,
I guess Drake has a definite problem with Guns N' Roses. I've heard a couple interviews with him the last few days. He really had a problem with them, and he never wanted to do shows with them because he said he always knew they were going to pull some kind of shit, like having strippers come in, take their top off, just some sort of stuff that I guess the Joneses considered Bush League.
Well, Bush is downstairs.
Good point.
Maybe that would have been a better, I would have paid more attention.
There you go.
I don't know. The problem was, I guess, that the Joneses, they never got out of their own way long enough to cash it in,
Right.
The constant lineup changes, drugs, Andy, drugs.
Drugs?
Drugs.
Drugs, you say?
Bad management. I mean, that should be a band name right there. Bad management.
It probably is.
And then when you fail, well, it's obviously because it was bad management.
Bad management.
I don't know. Chaos. Have there been, well, I know Josh Todd had it tattooed across his lower torso, chaos.
You're correct.
Chaos, lineup changes, drugs, that usual Sunset Strip recipe of disaster,
Yeah, not the recipe for success.
Manager Danny Sugarman, that guy, Danny Sugarman, however you want to pronounce it, the same guy who was tied originally to Jim Morrison and the Doors mythology, he gets involved for a while.
Well, that should have helped.
Yeah, well, yeah, that only added more fuel to the fire. When Elektra Records wanted to sign the Joneses, Sugarman tried to create a bidding war, which resulted in the band missing out on getting a good deal with anybody.
So much for the manager helping you.
We're going to put another song in here. This song is called Look So Good, but the catchy turnaround on the chorus. Give it a listen. If I look so good, how come I feel so bad? This is New York Dolzy, but it's a good song. Give it a listen.
So
Jeff Drake, he regroups with a new version of the Joneses. A new version, Andy.
Did he have the same manager?
Bad management, Andy. So what's he wind up doing? He winds up cutting a batch of demos for RCA Records, but when the label passed on the band, those recordings were repurposed into what I would like to call the gloriously sleazy Tits and Champagne EP, which was released in 1989.
That's a great album title.
On a label called Trigon Records. Let's give you a little bit of that. That's a great song. Here's Tits and Champagne.
Enjoy some tits and champagne, everybody.
Not necessarily in that order. Those are stunt beers, actually.
Now, here's a story that could only happen in the world of rock and roll. By 1990, the Joneses had spent nearly a decade, Gary, building their reputation the hard way. What is that hard way? Through self-released records, endless club gigs, and growing that cult following all throughout Southern California. But then came a phone call from New York City.
Bring, bring.
The band from Boston had just signed a major label deal with Atlantic Records. And get this, they were called the Joneses 2.
What, not like the Joneses 1?
No.
Joneses 2.
Exactly.
No, we're called the Joneses 2, lads.
And then there was also the Joneses also. Suddenly, Drake finds himself in a battle over the band's name.
You know, actually, that band that you're about to talk about from Boston, that band, I have that cassette. They were a one and done. They were called the Joneses. Their album was called Hard. You cannot find it on Spotify. It's hard to come by. It's well worth the listen. And they were kind of the Joneses to me before I found out about the Joneses we're covering now. But anyways, we digress. What about this band from Boston, Andy?
So according to Drake, the lawyer, he's like representing this band out of Boston and doesn't exactly open the negotiations with a compliment. He's kind of attacking the guys, saying, you know, the message was basically, nobody's ever heard of your band. Why are you bothering anyhow? You don't need the name. Just give it up. But Drake, yeah, he wasn't interested in listening to the guy. The problem was the Boston band had one thing that the California Joneses didn't, a trademark.
A trademark. We trademarked the name.
Yeah, very important step. The legal fight, well, that would have been expensive. And, you know, Drake, he had spent all these years scraping by, trying to get rent money and, you know, living on the edge as a musician. And he knows how stories like these end. Instead of heading to court, he agreed on a settlement to surrender the name.
So I'll give you the name and you give me money?
That's exactly what it was.
And how'd that work?
It was kind of weird, though, because usually whoever has stuff out, like, published first is the winner.
Yeah, isn't that the general rule? If there's two bands with the same name, the one that has the copyright with work on a major public platform first gets it.
Yeah, and the Joneses, they actually had quite a bit of output before. They'd been featured in magazines. They toured the country, so
Yeah,
they gave up kind of easy.
You're right, though. A legal fight probably would have been expensive.
Yeah, definitely.
So what happened?
So the payout apparently was substantial enough, get this, to change his life overnight.
Really? That kind of cash, huh?
I don't know what the sum was. I could never find where it was, but apparently it was quite a bit. So what did Jeff Drake do with that money? Exactly what you expect. He bought a fully restored 1968 Mustang. I know that's what you were going to guess.
Oh, wow. Talk about a retirement plan.
Right.
On 4 wheels.
Yeah. So the band, they become...
What about the other guys in the band?
Doesn't mention them getting a penny.
Did Jeff Drake name it? You know, there's not one single dude in the band named Jones.
Yeah, there is not one. But also Drake was the only one from the beginning. He formed the band. He's the only constant member all the way through. So I guess he probably did technically own the name. But the band, they briefly become... Yeah. The band, they briefly become the Hollywood Joneses. And all the records that were about to be released, that had been pressed and created, they had to put a sticker over it saying, hey, check out our new name, the Hollywood Joneses.
Oh, great.
Yeah, kind of a bizarre twist, but it's spent all those years building up that name, building up a reputation, just to have it kind of swept away like that, taken from them.
Well, I don't know. We did an episode on the Zeros, and wasn't that the same kind of a deal? There was an LA punk band that existed before the purple-haired LA Sunset Strip Zeros, and there was kind of a skirmish over who had legal rights to the name. It's not the first time. Won't be the last time.
Also hearkening way back to, I think, our third episode with the London Choir Boys.
And having to change just to the Choir Boys?
Correct.
Well, London's highly overrated anyways.
So according to Drake, he was paid a lot of money by this Boston attorney, and this was back in 1990, and that was to stop using the name the Joneses. But right after the Boston group breaks up, he's like, fuck it, we're just going to keep using the name. Thanks for the money, boys.
Yeah, like I said, the band had merit, and if you track that down, or it's on YouTube, so if you want to listen to a couple of tracks from YouTube, but it's a shame because that band only was one and done from Boston, so...
But given, how there's that kind of funny punchline where Jeff got the last laugh, the rest of the story isn't nearly as funny. That settlement money, for the name, it quickly disappeared into that previously mentioned vintage Mustang, and then drugs and an addiction that was already spiraling way out of control. Within a year, Drake's life had completely unraveled.
Unraveled, you say?
Yeah, more than before.
But I got a Mustang.
Right. He probably ended up living in it.
This band also, they weren't above taking a couple of chestnut songs, some old classic rock songs and whatever, and reshaping them into their own. And they've actually got a couple of good ones out there that move right along. I'll let Andy introduce them. We're not going to play them in their entirety, but we're going to play part of one and part of the other. And listen how they kick the shit out of these standard rock songs.
Yeah, they turned the Elton John song Crocodile Rock, they turned that into a very fast-moving, high-energy rock track. And also Route 66, that vintage nugget, they do a great number on this too. Obviously they speed everything up because, they're punk, but they do a great version. They don't just make it loud and noisy. These are great songs. Check them out.
Yeah, no, maybe not as fast as Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, if you know anything about that band and their cover history. Those guys are brilliant too. But yeah, here's part of Crocodile Rock, part of Route 66. Here you go. These guys rock.
Holding hands and skimming stone. I don't know, go Chevy and a press one.
By 1991, how far have we moved up in the timeline, Andy?
I think we started back in the 1920s.
Yeah. Prohibition, 01 and 02 when Grandpa was hauling coal off the freighter. Not that far back, people, but by 91, the wheels had completely come off for Jeff Drake.
They had.
Yeah, the front man who once terrorized stages with the Joneses, he's now homeless, Andy.
Homeless.
He's broke, Andy.
Broke.
He's deep in the grip of heroin addiction, Andy.
Heroin addiction. What a great place to be.
Well, homeless, broke, and a heroin addict. Great, right?
The trifecta.
So desperate to try to find a way out of this, Drake tried to get into a treatment program in Santa Ana.
At least he tried to get some help.
Yeah, but I guess for him, getting help wasn't exactly simple. So every day he had to call and hope a bed had opened up. Day after day, nothing.
Did he have to hope somebody OD'd and died and
I don't
freed
know.
up the bed?
Finally, after 2 frustrating weeks, he got the call that he'd been waiting for, but there's just one problem. On the way to the facility, his car dies in Anaheim, Andy. Is that the Mustang, Andy?
Not the Mustang.
The Mustang can't die.
Say it ain't so.
But he finds himself stranded, and now he's dope sick. But rather than give up, he starts walking. When he finally arrives at the treatment center, exhausted and desperate, a nurse delivers another crushing blow. Hey, come back tomorrow.
What?
Tomorrow. For most people, that's just an inconvenience. But for somebody deep in withdrawal, that might as well have been a lifetime away,
Yeah, that's a real punch to the gut.
At that point, all Drake could think about was making the sickness stop. And that's when a terrible, terrible idea started sounding like a good one, Andy.
Well, let's hear this idea before we determine if it was good or bad.
Well, he remembers a couple of friends who had bragged about bank robberies and how easy parts of the jobs supposedly were.
This is off to a bad start.
Yeah, exactly, Easy. It's easy, lads. So in a haze of desperation, Drake convinces himself, I can pull it off.
I can do this. I'm smart.
So he walks into a local bank, handed over a withdrawal slip demanding cash, and somehow he walks out of the bank with a whole $3,000, Andy.
A whole $3,000.
Yeah, I don't know.
Life-changing.
For a brief moment, it worked. The money became drugs.
Of course.
The drugs became relief.
Of course.
And the relief, I guess, well, it lasts about as long as you'd expect it to last.
For the rest of his life?
30 minutes later, less than half an hour later, Drake is surrounded by police officers with guns drawn. The robbery is almost over before it even begun, So what follows, Andy?
I'm going to guess nothing positive, but...
Federal prison followed, Andy.
Federal prison, not just jail. Federal prison.
So all of a sudden, this is not looking too good. And,
maybe it wasn't such a good idea after all.
I guess the Joneses. And, when you have a Jones, we're here to educate as well as entertain. The slang term Jones, Andy, and jonesing, did you know that originated in the early 1960s within the New York City drug scene?
I did not.
Particularly among jazz musicians and heroin addicts.
Well, that makes sense.
I guess the phrase started as covert code for narcotics, and eventually this evolves to describe the intense cravings and withdrawal symptoms associated with addiction. I don't know. I guess in the late 50s and the early 60s, users adopted the name Mr. Jones as a kind of a subtle code name for heroin, Andy.
Wonder why.
Well, I guess newcomers that are looking to buy would ask dealers, are you holding Mr. Jones? Over concern of, a police presence around. But in the 1960s vernacular, having a Jones meant that you were carrying a heavy burden or a habit because, of course, in the English language, our language often adds an S to describe uncontrollable states like measles, for instance, or jitters,
Right.
The proper noun Jones became synonymous with the physical affliction of having a drug habit, Andy. I don't know. I guess another popular theory points to Great Jones Street or Jones Alley in Manhattan's East Village. Folklore claims that this was an area where heroin users would congregate to buy and inject drugs, though historians have found little printed evidence of this at that time. But, by the 1970s, the noun, it transitions into the verb, jonesing, to describe the jittery, shivering reality of withdrawal. And then over the decades, the term slipped into mainstream language language. Today, it is commonly used to describe any intense longing or craving, whether you are just withdrawing from a narcotic or maybe you're just jonesing for a Krispy Kreme donut. I don't know.
I've definitely used that phrase when I'm referring to something I'd really like to have. Never heroin, though.
This jonesing, I guess, looking back, Drake says that prison wasn't quite the nonstop nightmare portrayed in the movies. There was kind of one fight that he had, but mostly it's just the relentless routine that wore him down. You know, the loss of freedom, I guess the humiliation, you know, the rigid schedules. He even tried writing some songs behind the bars, but
how'd that go?
According to him, every song he wrote in prison was terrible.
Well, I don't know. If you're in prison, you're probably not looking at the bright side of things. But one surreal chapter remained. During a brief furlough, Drake managed to do something that probably shouldn't have been possible. Reunite the Joneses for a concert, Gary.
We're getting the boys back together, lads.
Got the band back together. Because of the terms of his release, that show couldn't be publicly advertised. And I'm not sure where that comes from, but technically, he wasn't even supposed to be anywhere near where they were serving alcohol. But his father was fully aware of what was going on, picks him up, takes him to the show, knowing just how badly his son really wanted to get back up on stage.
Now, you can't be around rock and roll, rowdy people, alcohol, drugs. Hey, Dad, how about you give me a lift?
Sure, let's go, son. So against all odds, the classic tits and champagne lineup of the Joneses comes together one more time. Of course, word had leaked out, so the venue was packed. Then the band hits the stage, and for one night, Gary, the man who's caught between prison walls and his personal demons, he got another shot to be a rock and roll frontman once again.
Hard to believe.
The Joneses on that show did not hold anything back. It was like balls to the wall rock and roll. They played as if it might be the very last show they'd ever get, and who knows? It was probably very possible at that time. Speaking of their songs, let's listen to the song Bad Attitude. Here we go. Bad Attitude from the Joneses.
This has got kind of a power pop feel to me. Not only that, but it's got very Ramones-y too. Very,
yeah, it'll sound almost familiar in a way, but not copycat.
Either like almost Joey Ramone-esque vocals or Sammy Sirius from the Zeros, who sings more than sings. But this is great. If you listen to it with a power pop slant, this is Bad Attitude.
Days
after Drake's release from prison and his hard-won recovery in the mid-90s, the Joneses finally found something that had eluded them for years, and that was stability.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a good record deal.
Another record contract.
Yeah.
Familiar faces returned to the fold, including bassist Mike Acaccio, guitarist Johnny Nation, keyboardist Greg Kuhn, and while drummer Byron Reynolds brought fresh energy to the lineup, together they ushered in a new chapter focused on independent releases, live performances, and steering clear of that self-destructive chaos that had defined much of the band's earlier history. And for once, Drake wasn't chasing a record deal or a gig or the next song. He buried himself in books. He earns a degree in history.
Impressive.
Sets his sight on becoming a professor. A complete reinvention.
Definitely.
But after putting in the work, he learned a hard truth. You know, his prison record would likely prevent him from ever teaching. And once again, a mistake from the past cast a long shadow over his future.
Yeah,
But
that's a shame to do all that work and then find out that there's potentially nothing you can do with it.
it's like those stories of people that get sent away to prison, and while they're languishing in prison, they take law and then they become a lawyer while in prison.
Yeah.
That gives a new term to passing the bar exam, I think, right?
Exactly.
I don't know. By the early 2000s, though, Jeff Drake had put a lot of distance between himself and the chaos of his past, and he immersed himself in academics and focused on building a new life, and music had largely faded into the background.
Completely retired from it.
I don't know. I guess as far as he was concerned, you know, the Joneses were just another forgotten chapter in Southern California punk sleaze history.
You know, Gary, the funny thing about cult bands, they never really seem to stay buried. In 2005, Drake received an unexpected call from Full Breach Kicks Records. This label, they wanted to assemble like a compilation of the Joneses collection. You know, they had all those EPs, those singles, and only the one album. But he wanted to gather up basically all of the recordings and put them out there for, you know, a whole new generation of fans and listeners. For Drake, this interest really kind of came completely out of left field because he really had figured that the Joneses, long gone, long forgotten, nobody cared about them anymore. But instead, he discovered that the band's reputation had only grown with time. Fans, they're all trying to track down all the old recordings on like places like Discogs and eBay. They're like looking this stuff up, connecting with the songs he had written decades earlier. The resulting compilation, titled Criminal History Revisited. This introduced the Joneses to listeners who were not even born when the band first exploded onto the punk scene. This renewed attention sparked a handful of reunion shows over the following years as well. Former members returned, old friendships were rekindled, you know, bridges mended, fences mended, whatever that saying is. The Joneses, once again, find themselves on stage. One of the most notable reunions came in 2015 when the late Todd Youth, who, you know, Gary was known for his work with Murphy's Law, Danzig, Chelsea Smiles. And I think we've talked about him before. I feel like he was involved with Degeneration as well. He joins the lineup, and the band's final reunion performance followed back in 2016. So speaking of those songs being re-released, let's listen to the song Big Boy from the band The Joneses.
Everybody's cursing.
Andy, that revival of theirs, it didn't stop there.
No?
I guess interest in the band continues to grow.
Good.
And so here's a record label name for you, Puke and Vomit Records.
Nothing tells me you're a serious label like that name.
Yeah, we got a recording deal. Was it with RCA? No. Was it with Geffen? No. Was it with Columbia? No. Was it with Warner Brothers? No. Was it with Reprise? No. Was it with EMI? No. Who was it with?
Puke and Vomit Records.
Oh, I love that record label. Puke and Vomit. Can you imagine what the label on the middle of the record looks like?
Only imagine.
What's the company logo for Puke and Vomit?
Right. I don't know, because the same thing. So what is it?
I don't know. Anyways, we digress. Puke and Vomit Records, they assembled a series, I guess, if you can call Puke and Vomit label, deluxe vinyl reissues, Andy.
Deluxe. Yeah.
Deluxe reissues and collecting the entirety of the Joneses' recorded output, everything that they have done.
Nice.
So that interest in the band is continuing to grow. So we got a bunch of vinyl reissues. Not bad for a band that spent much of its existence on the verge of collapse, Andy.
Yeah, they're always one bad move away from falling completely apart.
I don't know. As always, when you look back in retrospect or whatever, Drake remains both proud and genuinely surprised by the lasting impact of the Joneses. What once seemed like a chaotic, self-destructive blur had evolved into something far more enduring. And that's a punk rock legacy that refused and still refuses to die, Andy.
Still refuses to die.
Yeah, kind of like Cher.
Right. She can't. She's more plastic than human. The Joneses, they never sold millions of records. They were definitely never like MTV stars, Gary. They never landed even a major label breakthrough that always seemed just out of reach for them, but it just came so easy to some of their peers. But also, that's why this story still kind of matters. They played rock and roll with grease under their fingernails, Chuck Berry riffs delivered with punk rock aggression and energy, songs about criminals, pills, bad decisions, which is self-prophesying. And, nights where people maybe possibly ended up arrested or running from trouble. Other bands eventually turned sleaze into a very marketable product, and it's done very well. But the Joneses, they were living it long before anybody else ever even figured out how to package it. They were definitely one of the true originals.
Look, lads, you're going to need lots more scarves. More bangles, lads.
More scars, more makeup.
Anybody got a vest?
Where's the nail polish?
Son of a bitch, my eyeliner. Where's the coal black, lads?
My pointy boots.
I need a lot more dangly shit, lads. Bangles? Baubles? I don't know. I guess their legacy is not going to be measured in platinum albums, Andy. Not even a gold album, not even an aluminum album, Andy, But this band is still loved,
They are.
It's measured in the bands that they influenced, the musicians that still talk about them, and the fact that decades later, people are still discovering these records and wondering how a band this good never got bigger.
Right.
Maybe that's the most Joneses ending possible, that they never quite made it.
Seems fitting.
I guess that's what makes them unforgettable, eh, Andy?
Exactly.
And if any of you out there would like to have this album in your own collection,
yes, please.
We've done the homework for you, and we've gone to Discogs where, Andy,
yes,
there are 24 listings for Keeping Up with the Joneses.
Okay, 24.
Ranging in price, Andy, from $15 for the cassette tape.
Not bad.
Or you could have $14.30 for the LP in very good condition.
That's a good deal.
And then we've got somebody who's totally ridiculous that expects you to pay $299.98 for this LP.
That seems like a bit of a stretch.
That's probably from Drake himself.
Right.
And we're coming to another end. I hope you enjoyed this romp down Sunset Strip alley with the Joneses. And thanks for hanging out with us. I'm going to give Andy the last word. Thank you, peeps, for hanging out with us. Until the next episode, Andy.
Thanks, everybody. We always appreciate you being here with us. Keep those recommendations coming in for bands you want us to talk about.
Would it kill you to give us a like every now and again? I mean, we're trying to increase the numbers here. We do this for you guys.
Follow us on social media and send us emails. Keep in touch with us. We appreciate hearing from you. And as always, stay trashy, my friends.
Ooh la la. We're out.
And to our fallen comrade, Mr. Mink, I think Pink Floyd said it best. Wish you were here. You're here in spirit, brother.
Godspeed, Mink, wherever you may be.
been listening to the Rock and Roll Gutter Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the dirty world of rock and roll. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more listeners like you.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rock and Roll Gutter Podcast for all the latest updates, news, and more.
Got questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes? Reach out to us at rnrguttermail@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
So join us again next time for another wild ride through the raw and gritty side of rock and roll. So until then, keep it trashy.